remember. Hi. Okay, Ray. How you doing? Hope you're feeling better. Okay, so I'm going to do my best to put all these things together. I'm talking off the top of my head, but I've said this many times. So if I miss anything, I'll send you another video. First of all, from what I have been told by a third party, because the school has never contacted me themselves, I have been investigated, and I'm still being investigated, for having an affair with a swimming coach, which at the time that was reported, nothing had transpired between us. And the other thing I'm being still investigated for is for having that someone claimed I claimed sexual harassment against an instructor, both of which, like I said, that's false too. And I'll just go back one step from there. Anybody that knows me knows that I would never claim sexual harassment against anybody. One, I'm smart enough to know that that would ruin my career forever working, and you of all people and everybody else I know knows that I want to go back to work. I am not one of those people that want to live off of Social Security and whatever money I have. I want to work because that's what makes me move. Another reason I would never claim sexual harassment. Oh shucks, now I forgot it. I know this all the time, but I'm just not that way. You know how I hate lawyers? Because sexual harassment requires a lawsuit, and you know how I despise lawyers. I dropped out of law school because I was going to school with a bunch of people that were lawyers, or going to be lawyers, and they had that same personality. And I've despised lawyers ever since Dad even before Dad passed away, when he first had to go through that, I forget what it's called right now, where they question you in deposition. When he had to go through that deposition, and I was like appalled at the kind of questions that they could ask, and how intimidating they were. And of course we know that all helped to lead to Dad's death, on top of the fact that Mom couldn't get a decent lawyer, or a lawyer, after Dad died from asbestos cancer. So that's why I eventually went to law school, so I would never have to deal with those people. So those are two major reasons, and I think very good reasons, why I would have never claimed sexual harassment against anybody. And everybody I know, including this nice young lady who's been helping me out, knows that I go out of my way to protect the identity of anybody that I'm even involved with, to the point of almost making her neurotic. So, I value my privacy, but more than anything, me, I always value the other. I always put the other person first. So I would have never done anything like that. Now, let's see, I've given you, why I wouldn't, and what I'm being accused of. And then the last thing that I was accused of, which brought this all back to head, because I was trying to do what your friend said, lie low, let it go away, even though I knew it wasn't going to, is when I was working in automotive, there was a gentleman that worked in the tool crib. Apparently he hated my instructor. I was not aware of this. I have a voicemail that his wife left me, and states this in. And the teacher never told me. So I went in there blind. He kept talking about, he was always talking about him, but the guy was 74, only there until the end of until the new building got built, and then he was going to retire. So I didn't think he needed to hear all that crap. And I didn't think a guy in the tool crib had any power over him. However, he and all the other automotive teachers only lost their keys to the tool crib. Now, the collision teacher, the cosmetology teacher, and all the other teachers in the industry department did not lose their keys to their tool cribs. It's only in automotive, where Mr. Hironaka worked, the man I worked for. So I did not know that, but going in, that man had heartburn for him, so therefore, since I worked for him, he had a heartburn for me. He accused me of three things, two of which were at the fault of my instructor. One is he did say to the classroom that he could not accept money. He said, then therefore give money to Jeanette, which turned out to be, something I shouldn't have done, but I didn't know that. As far as I knew, if the dean told him not to, and he was telling the classroom that, and to give it to me, I figured that was cleared. The other thing is, I did not know that this man in the tool crib was supposed to check in, cars. So because my teacher asked me to check cars in, and these are the things he accused me of. One, taking money, which I did, but I did it at the direction of my teacher. Two, calling customers and telling them when to bring their cars in, which I did at the direction of him. And the third thing, which was totally bogus, which he made up, and according to the bylaws of the rules at El Camino College, he should be severely reprimanded, and I think he should have an equal punishment that I've had to undergo, which is humiliation, suspicion, and loss of wages. And that's because by the way, his name is Kevin, and I don't know his last name. I can find out. And Kevin made up the story that I stopped somebody from lemon lawing their car. And that is not true, because the woman called me, and I have her voicemail that came in after he accused me of this, and I was put on suspension. And by the way, I've been put on suspension, and against El Camino rules, is I have never been given a form in which they told me what I was accused of. The only reason I know what I'm accused of, which is those, like I said, everything in automotive, by the way, I have been cleared of. I was cleared within a couple of days and was supposed to go back to work, but then this wound up back in the president's office, which meant I was facing, I knew exactly what that meant, and I was facing the charges of having an affair with somebody, which, by the way, the judge in my restraining order said they had no right to investigate because we were both over the age of 18, and it didn't matter whether he was married or not. And two, the other thing was the claim of the sexual harassment. Now, let's see. I don't know where to go exactly from here, but I'll just go ahead and say, okay, they have violated my right of privacy because they have told other students. It was my roommate from hell that claimed that I was having
it. He said that he was going to go get a gun?
Yeah, I know, I'm just starting. It was my roommate from hell that when he moved in here, and I told him that I had friends, and sometimes that they were from the school, and they could be teachers that stopped by, male or female. He took that immediately to mean, oh, you're having an affair with somebody. And then I was baking cookies all the time for the swim team, so he would follow me. I didn't know this at the time, but I found out later. He followed me back and forth into the pool area, and he saw me bringing food, or sometimes I would buy these 2-for-1 sandwiches, and I'd give one to the swimming coach. Yes, I was giving him food. Yes, I gave him cookies along with the rest of the swim team, which is, yes, that is against school policies, but that's his fault, not mine. That's the professor's fault. That's not my fault. He should have known better not to take him. Yes, I did give him a pen, and 2 of them actually, and he shouldn't have taken those either. But again, that's not my. I mean, I don't know what their rules are, and I didn't find out till much later on that they shouldn't be doing that. Let's see. Let me see now if I can go. So like I said, I moved in roommate from hell, and well, actually, I could start before that. Because I was always taking swimming classes, and I was in the handicapped area. The 2 women that work in the gym despised me and always felt suspicious because I started walking, along with a few other people. And because I spent more time on the track and whatever, then they didn't know if I was in a class or what. Everybody had suspicions and started blowing that out of proportion. Then I met a gentleman on the track, Tom Hazel, and he has a spine condition very similar to mine, and we became, I don't want to say friends, but acquaintances. Close acquaintances now, but primarily because, 1, he was the first man that ever talked to me after my spinal cord injury, and 2, because he had a back similar to mine. Then, one day when I was in adaptive PE, let me go back to that. That's fine. One day when I was in adaptive PE, in a swim class. I met two gentlemen there. The screen went black. Is that okay? I just wanted to make sure. The screen went black. Oh, I'm sorry. One day when I was in adaptive PE, I met two gentlemen on different occasions, and they were sometimes friends and sometimes foes. One, I can't think of his name right offhand, but he was from the Middle East, and the other one's name is Michael. He's paralyzed, and his arm goes like this. Okay, so this is what we think of Michael. I can never remember his last name. Banfield, something like that. Anyway, Michael was always hitting on me in the pool. Now, I never claimed, again, I mean, to the point of sexual harassment beyond. And now, originally I started talking to him because, and I'm sorry, I need to slow down, because I thought I might be able to get a job with him. But the job he wanted to offer me was sales, and you know how much I hate sales. So, but he was constantly hitting on me, and I just didn't want to go back into that swimming class. So I would switch swimming classes, but then I'd run into the other gentleman, and the other gentleman, when you're disabled and you're friendly like I am and helpful, I give my number out to just about anybody. Anyway, the Iranian gentleman, one day I needed a ride somewhere, and he always said, "Oh, I'll drive you anywhere you want to go." He kept telling me, "Oh, I love you. You're so beautiful." This is in the pool. If that's not sexual harassment, I don't know what it is. And one day he actually grabbed my boob purposely. Not on an accident, but purposely. He grabbed my boob in the swimming pool. Now, again, I didn't report that. But he decided this one day he was going to drive me somewhere. And he was horrible. He was blind in one eye, and the sun was out, and he almost killed us. So I took over driving, and didn't even know if I could drive at the time because I was still taking the little short buses to school. And I took him by a wine store that was brand new, and silly me, never thinking that Iranians generally don't drink, which he didn't. But he had a friend, and he stashed all of his money in his friend. This is the guy that he went to college with. He stashed all of his money with his friend in his friend's bank in Colorado, and he sat there and bought him $300 worth of wine at this store and made me sit there for 3 hours while he used my walker and I had nothing to use. Now, granted, the guy lost a leg, but he's been babying it. He should have had his own walker or whatever. But for every hour we were there, I said, okay, that's one $5.99 bottle of champagne that you're going to owe me. And after 3 hours, I got hungry at the very end, too, and I got a candy bar. Now, also while we were in there during that time, he faked some sugar attack, some diabetic attack, so he could get a candy bar because he was hungry. But anyway, he called me then over. Then we parted, and he paid for my 3 bottles of $5.99 champagne and my candy bar, and we went our separate ways. And he started calling me over the weekend. I never returned his call. His last phone call I finally picked up, and he said, "You owe me $18 and some odd cents, whatever." And you know what? You know me. I don't like confrontations, so I decided I was just going to pay him. So the next day we had class together. Somehow he knew or understood that I was going to meet him in the pool area to pay him. I think I had left him a message. And it was the first day and only day I've ever seen him with an assistant. And this is where sort of it all began. Because I walked in. I went in and dressed, showered real quick and dressed, and came in with my video recorder on and told him, I have my video recorder on, and I am recording this. I said, I'm going to pay you, and then he went from $18 to $25, and I said, luckily I had $25 on me. I paid him, and I said, I'm paying you. I don't need to pay you, but I want you out of my life. And I said, and by the way, if you ever touch my boob again, I said, I will bring you up on sexual harassment charges. Now, at that point, Mark Leip, which was my teacher, heard this, and he didn't know anything about it. And of course not, because I didn't say anything, because it goes back to the very first thing I said. I never claim I never bring up sexual harassment charges, because I know that'll stop me from ever getting a job. Plus, it'll ruin people's opinion of me. So I just let him go. And the other thing is Corey Stanbury, the coach, the swimming coach, the water polo coach, whatever, was in his office, and he heard all of this. And kind of afterwards, I felt really embarrassed, because I didn't even really know him, other than he would sometimes say hi to me. And I apologized, and I explained to him the whole situation that happened, and that's how we sort of became friends. Now, Coach Stanbury is where the problem then began. That's the person that my ex-roommate then claimed sexual harassment charges against. Oh, let me go back one more step. Somewhere, I don't remember exactly when it was, I was in the Special Resource Center working, and I happened to have mentioned that boob incident and the whole thing in the swimming pool, because I know how the school talks. And I assumed it would eventually get back to the SRC center that some guy I claimed some guy grabbed my boob. Which, by the way, this guy did say, at first he said, oh, I never did it, I never did that. And then he said, oh, I did that 3 weeks ago. You should be over that. So I have him on tape admitting that he actually did do it. And I was mentioning this to Brian, who's helping me with the computers. And he said, oh, you have to, report that. And I'm like, I don't have to do anything I don't want to do. I said, a woman doesn't have to report a rape. You can't force me to report this. And, he was trying to convince me he had to. And then he kept asking me who the person was, and I wouldn't tell him. Again, I never tell. And he figured it out who it was, because I said, and on top of that, he was always trying to push me on his religion. And he goes, was that so-and-so? And I never said yes or no. And he said, well, he goes, he's in a wheelchair. And I'm like, and I'm like sitting there looking at him like, nah, I'm not going to acknowledge any of this. But anyway, one of the girls that worked for him in the Special Resource Center computer lab had been harassed by that same gentleman for him trying to change her to a Christian. She was still, whatever they are, Muslim or whatever. Anyway, so there's another incident where another person knows that I did not file a sexual harassment suit against anybody, when I could have, and I should have, but I didn't, because even she wouldn't even do it, the woman that worked there. So they can't, they have enough instances now where they shouldn't know that I do not file sexual harassment claims. You want me to do that periodically?
No. Oh, yeah. Well,
okay. So, like I said, that's where I met Corey. And then Corey would say hi periodically. And then towards the end of that semester, it was that same semester where that stuff happened with the boob and everything. And I thought I heard somebody tapping on your door. And anyway, I happened to mention to Corey, oh, there's no adaptive swimming classes this summer. And he said, oh, go ahead and sign up for my water polo class. And I was still, by that point, I was just getting out of my chair. I was trying to get out of my chair. And I only used my chair when I was going long distances. If I remember, see, this would have been summer. So I don't even know if I had finished my lawsuit or not, which you know about. That might have been the semester I did finish my lawsuit, like, as you are so well aware. How much stress I went through with that. And then, water polo team was in the deep pool. I was in the shallow pool, and I would walk in. I took care of myself. I never asked him any questions like, what should I do? What should I not do? I was just walking. Anyway, I totally took care of myself. And occasionally he would come over, or I would go over and talk to him. It was very rare, but somehow it led to, I could see that he had some kind of problem that was really bothering him, and I had no idea what it was. Then his birthday came. And his wife showed up with a cake. This little mousy brown, curly-haired, shoulder-length, curly-haired, skinny, tiny little lady showed up with 2 kids. which I knew couldn't have been his. Or at least I was pretty sure they weren't his. Um, and he introduced me to her and kind of told her, I guess, a little bit about me, or had probably already told her. And she looked at me and said, gosh, I wish something like that good ever happened in my life. And I have never forgotten that, because that was the first thing that ever let me know that they had a huge problem in their marriage. Because if she didn't think that the guy she married, making the most money in that school, $150,000 to $60,000 a year, who loved her more than, probably equally or more than you love your wife, and I'm not kidding, this man did everything for her, then and I thought, God, what, this guy is like such a fool. She was 25 years younger than him. This was, of course, his second marriage. And, but I knew that was, I mean, I thought, how could she say that to me? How could she say, God, nothing good like that's ever happened to me? My God, she was with, from what I learned later on, well, I'll get into that in just a minute, but shortly, well, probably the next day or two, I looked at Corey and said, what the hell were you thinking? And because I'm sorry, and I apologize. I know why you did it. You were a priest. You wanted, it's a different story. Corey has women, gorgeous women in his classes all the time. So he's not really hard up for women, but and I've recently found out that he's had more than 50 women that he's been with. He recently confessed that to me when I asked. So, yeah, evidently, I mean, I don't think I've ever had 50 men ever ask me out, let alone had an opportunity to sleep with them. Anyway, so, yeah, he was not hard up for women at all. And his answer to me on more than one occasion was, I married her because she needed insurance. And the next thing he said after that is, well, we used to have the same, interests, but we've kind of grown apart. Now, they had been married about 2.5 years at that point, and maybe 3 at the most. But everybody in school knew how much he loved her, and he does, and he did, and he still does, and they're in the process of getting a divorce. So, to go on with that, I would sit there, like I said, and exercise. I mean, we didn't talk about it much after that. Can I have a little more? Anyway. And then, like I said, I would just go in there and do my thing, and then he would, but once in a while, we'd talk about, I would talk about how I was interested in looking, for somebody. I said, don't you have any friends or something? And he's like, oh, I never have time for friends. I'm always here. And I was like, well, I said, is there a way, like, you can find something for me to do? I can come to swim meets and I can find somebody. And I was always looking for finding somebody, not him, but I was looking for finding somebody in the general public. And I was looking for a way that I could do it, because it's so hard for me to get out with my injury. I'm so debilitated when I'm at home. I don't move. And I have somebody here now that can attest to that. And I have a lot of people who can attest to that, because I have a lot of helpers I've had some helpers from school, and there's a few people who can attest to that I don't move, unless I've got somebody with me. Anyway, and I don't go out, and Terry, my roommate and caregiver, could attest to that too. I just don't go out. It's too much work. It's a rare occasion for me to go out. Anyway, so like I said, I could see that he had something, after those statements, and just the look in his face, and the fact that he was there so many hours, and he never went home when he had 3 or 4 hour breaks, and he doesn't live that far away. But frankly, if it was me and I was making that much money, $160,000 a year, I would have had my wife at least come and have lunch with me, or meet me in my office and bring me lunch, or do something. She was on campus all the time anyway. It turns out that he let her quit working. So he was paying for everything, and she was taking dance classes. And she's 36 years old or 37, and she wants to be this acrobatic performer. And he was spending $10,000 to $20,000 about once every other month at least, sending her to what I call clown college, but because it's an acrobatic event, but it's supposed to be like the best college in the world in Montreal. And he did everything. He took care of her kids. He trained him to swim. She had him wipe out her ex-husband for money so she could be she would be totally dependent on Corey. She was very strategic at this because and she was always claiming, oh, what a hard life she had, and this and that and the other. And then eventually it came out that, Corey started telling me that she had moved out of his bedroom, and without telling him why. Then he broke down and told me that she hadn't slept with him in over like a year and a half, and that was because she had this urinary tract infection. And I'm looking at him like, and I didn't say anything until I verified that with 2 different doctors, that nobody has a urinary tract infection that long, or yeast infection, either one, without wanting, without lying or having some severe other venereal disease, which. And she was, and she wasn't taking any normal medication. She was taking, whatever, what do you call it, natural stuff, like, from a vitamin store or something. And Corey's kind of that way too. He doesn't like to take medicine, but, there comes a point, hey, if you can't sleep with your husband, you go take something from the doctor. I'm sorry. But, and then it progressed from that to, you go and sleep with other women because... Yeah, I mean, she didn't even tell him why. She just said, oh, go out and sleep with other women. She goes, you want to do all that stuff, and you're a sex addict. You want to do all that stuff in videos, and, apparently she just wanted to do it missionary style, and anything else she thought was gross. So, but he told me that she used to like everything before when they got married. So what does that tell you about her? Anyway, I told him originally when he started talking to me, I will try and do everything I can to help you, stay with your wife. And I tried to tell him, things to do. Like, don't be so attentive. Gee, does that sound familiar? Don't be so available. Come home a little late. I don't care if you go to the grocery store or something and don't tell her about it. Just be a little bit mysterious. Well, he couldn't do that. And I said, don't pick her, just don't let her assume you're going to pick up her kids all the time. They're her kids. She has an ex-husband. Her and them, are responsible for him. And he's 60-something years old. He does not have to take care, but he did not have to do all that. But he really loved it. He loved being a father again. I don't know if it's because he just loves kids or it made him feel young. I think the majority of it is he really loved her, and why, I don't know, because like I said, it took him almost 2 years to tell me, oh, well, maybe I didn't give you enough information, because I repeated that same stuff. I said, Corey, all you've ever told me is that you married her for insurance, and in the next sentence you told me that you guys had, grown apart. I mean, you don't grow apart in like 2.5, 3 years. If you did, then you were never together. But as far as I was concerned, if he married her so she could have insurance, and he said they happened to be in Las Vegas, and so they got married, that means to me that they had a contract. They didn't have a marriage, but he never wanted to see it that way. Well, I always talk to my doctors. I have 2 doctors. One I've always talked to for 13 years. And then whenever I have a question about men and the way they're acting or whatever, I will ask somebody else to get their opinion. I will not tell them who it is or where they work or anything. I'll just tell them like the situation and ask them what they think. Well, the 3 men that I talked to all told me that you have to tell them. You have to tell them there's something wrong. So as we became closer, but he also became a little bit weird because I was taking in a water aerobics class with him, and apparently it was clear to everybody else there and not to me that he was very fond of me. I actually thought he thought I was a slut because he would say things to me like, oh, I just, like, when I broke up with this guy and I said, oh, I did something really bad. He goes, oh, you went back for one more round of sex. And I said, I just looked at him and I'd walk away because I'm like, I just couldn't even think of how to reply. Like, you think I'm such a slut? I would sleep with somebody that's leaving me? I'm not that stupid. I'm not going to give somebody sex that's leaving me. I'm not, I'm not that stupid. I'm like, that's how you get diseases, and I was in the habit of leaving him 2 or 3 messages in a row at night and clarifying that for him. And once in a while, but not very often, he'd say, I don't feel that way about you. And I really didn't. No, that's actually the way the way I thought he felt about me. Because by this point, he knew that I like sex, and that because I was telling him, I said, any woman that doesn't sleep with you and doesn't want to be with you, then you need, even according to these guys, she's using you, because if and a woman that loves you is not going to tell you to go have sex with other women. I said I said I'd probably shoot your ass if you told me that, if you went and slept with somebody else while I was, if I was married to you. So I said, people don't do that to somebody that they love. So anyway, in this water aerobics class, I had people coming up to me saying, oh, you two are so cute together, your boyfriend's really cute. And I'm like, and it started to bother me. And even one of my friends, Beth, I've known Beth McSorley for years, very long years. I mean, we're talking like 30 years. Even she told me that she could see how fond he was of me. And it was the first class she had taken with us in water aerobics. Anyway, and then a friend of mine has like a very similar injury to mine, except for instead of C2, hers is in the L section. Even she started saying, when she said that, oh, he's so fond of you, and with a big old smile, and it was like, you could tell, it's like, oh, like maybe you guys are going to get together, that kind of thing. And I immediately, I don't know, I went into this defense mode for both of us, and I said, oh, no, I said, oh, he just likes me because I bring him, when I have these 2-for-1 sandwiches, I bring him one. So to this day, now this was like a year and a half, 2 years ago, to this day, she's still bringing him sandwiches. And because I was in his office the other day, and anyway, and she did that. Now, she came in and wished him Happy Valentine's Day, which, by the way, he didn't wish me Happy Valentine's Day that day. And the year before, he went out of his way and came to where I was at and wished me Happy Valentine's Day, and asked me, oh, do you want to guess what I got for Valentine's Day from my wife? And he said nothing. He said, I gave her a card and she didn't even give me a kiss. So I quit going to that class, and I started swimming with the either swim team or water aerobic or the water polo team in the afternoon, because I was very uncomfortable that people were thinking that. So I wanted to get into an environment where I knew, like I had that during the summer, where I could just come in and swim and then leave and play around in the water and do whatever I needed to do. And so I went back to doing that. But then now it came to the point where Corey would every now and then come over and ask me to do something sexual in the pool. Like, he goes, oh, have orgasms. Let me watch you have an orgasm in the pool. And here I am. I'm trying not to go to the morning one. I'm doing tutoring. And I worked, I was doing 30 hours of free tutoring at the time. I didn't want to have to go back to that class, so I didn't, this is like, and I don't even know if you ever heard about it, but this is like the same thing about when Dad tried to molest me and you were in the other room and I couldn't say anything. It was the same thing. I just didn't know what to do. So, I mean, I just sort of like pretended like I was faking something, or I just sort of faked something so to make him happy, so he'd go. And I finally said something like, well, I'm done, okay? I mean, I just didn't know what to do. But anyway, so, and I would just try to blow off all that stuff because I understood that, he was in a very hard predicament. We went out for New Year's Eve. He asked me, I was supposed to go to a party with a friend of mine, which was a really dull party anyway. But he asked me to go out with him on New Year's Eve because his wife, of course, was out of town and hadn't even called him. And even at $160,000 a year, he had no money because his wife made him buy a $750,000 home that was probably now worth about $650,000. Anyway, and he had a perfectly nice home, and that was not him to buy something that expensive. But he told me that eventually he told me that he bought it for her because she was not happy with where they lived. So apparently she was never happy with anything he ever did, and he's not been able to see that. Like I said, and I told my male friends all of this, and anyway, on New Year's Eve we went out. I made dinner, and so we could have a picnic, and we actually just sat in the car, ate some food, waited until it said midnight, and he gave me a little peck on the cheek, and we drove home, and that was it. And he felt like he cheated on her, and I felt like I was a slut because he made me feel so bad. So, as usual, and that's the way he always made me feel, like I was doing something wrong. So then we didn't talk again, so we would go, like I would usually then go ahead and leave him messages on his phone at work, and never using his cell phone, which I had. But, I would always use his work phone, and I'd just leave a message just explaining, how he had made me feel. Anyway, then the next semester started, and, he would go on and continue to tell me how unhappy he was, and she was gone for like a whole month to Montreal, came back. Anyway, I know I'm going way too long into this, but you can cut most of this out. But anyway, when she came back from Montreal, they started marriage counseling sessions, and during the marriage counseling, well, first of all, he cried that night when I finally told him, on New Year's Eve, when we pulled back into the parking lot at school where my car was, he wanted to reach over and kiss me, and I just like, I said, I don't know if there's cameras in here, I'm sorry, but I don't do anything at all. I'm like, I don't care if it's a hug or anything, no, you're not doing that. And he had hugged me a couple of times in the pool area, but he said, my arms never left my side because I don't care if anybody's out there or whatever, and I wasn't, it's not just if there's cameras or not, but I just, I knew he loved her, and I knew, I mean, it was a bad situation, so I didn't want to get involved in it, and I was trying to stay away from it, and I kept going back to this other guy just to keep myself focused. And I'd say, he didn't know who the person was that I was seeing, but he said the guy was kind of an ass, and I knew he was, but he was better than the ass I was going with before. That was 7 years. So I had been dating this other ass for about a year, which happens to be another instructor at El Camino, which I just happened to not tell him about it because I kept everybody's identity unknown. And anyway, so I actually went back to dating that guy just so I would keep myself clean and clear and not get involved with, everything that was going on with Corey, because at this point he started telling me, if anything ever happens between me and my wife, I'm going to be after you so hard and so fast, and, and I knew nothing was, I knew she was never going to leave him because she didn't work. I knew he loved her, and he really wasn't going to leave her. But he was starting to say, the next time, I get involved with somebody, it's going to be different, and they're going to care about me and what I'm doing, and he's not. He's never going to get over her. He's so head over heels in love with her, he's never going to get over her. Even though he's filed for divorce, he's never going to. But anyway, So they started these marriage. He did cry that night when I told him that my male friends told me I had to tell him that that she was using him. And he goes, "Well, I'm wondering if she's having an affair." And I said, "I don't even think she's having an affair. I just think she's just not interested." And according to them, they just don't think she's interested in you. And from what you said, it's been a marriage of convenience. And, you know, I mean, he didn't boo-hoo, boo-hoo. He just, like, tears came rolling down his eyes. And sure enough, you know, the next time I spoke to him, he was back in there, you know, oh, he's still taking care of the kids, doing everything at home, and nothing's changed, you know, you can see. But eventually they started marriage counseling when she came back from Montreal. And I think it was the first week of marriage counseling. He came up to me in the pool or something. Somehow he came up to me and he said, oh, no, I stopped in his office because I used to talk to him all the time. And about the guy I was going out with. Anyway. And he said, I'm learning to ask people questions about themselves. As you know, I don't do that very well. But that's because I'm an introvert trying to pretend to be an extrovert, because that's what I need to do anything in this world. So anyway, so I asked him, I said, how did your counseling session go? And he'd say, he goes, does my breath smell? He goes, was that kiss I gave you? I said cheek, it was lips actually. He goes, was that kiss I gave you on New Year's any good? And I said, well, your breath didn't seem to smell, and the kiss was, I can't comment on because it was so quick and so fast. I said, I can't judge it. Sorry, can't give you any really good statement on either one of those. But I said, if your breath smelled, I don't think any of us that are taking swimming lessons would continue if your breath smelled as bad as she claims it is. You know, we just wouldn't do that. And then he said it, and then eventually he told me that in another session she said that he is really bad at sex, that his dick is limp, and let's see. Oh, and then eventually this is when I had roommate from hell now living with me, and I realized within the first 6 weeks that he was insane. Because the first 2 weeks he wasn't there, and then the next 2 weeks I realized he was insane. Beth McSorley was supposed to be in charge of him and everything. She wound up having her desk fall on her and had brain injury, so I had Terry ask the roommate from hell to move out. Roommate from hell went and filed charges went and told the school that I was having an affair with the instructor, which, like I said, at this point, this is all that's gone on. Nothing. I mean, there was that one little peck on New Year's Eve, and that was it. And somewhere around March or April, I think it was April, I hadn't been in there for a while, and I knew I was struggling trying to find a lawyer for roommate from hell. It had to be March. It was like March 9th, now that I think about it. Roommate from hell, anyway, he called me in. He texted me and said, you need to come swimming. You haven't been here for like a few days. So I went over there real quickly just to talk to him, and just said, I can't, not until I get a lawyer. And you know how much I hate lawyers, and I don't want to do this. And of course, he doesn't listen to a word I say, because I wasn't his wife that he was so madly in love with. So he gave me the name of a lawyer he used, for a woman that sexually harassed him. And I was just looking for I mean, I didn't know at that time, I didn't know the difference between sexual harassment and harassment. So, but he wouldn't call him with me. Now, if it was his wife, I knew he would have picked up the phone, called, made the appointment, and actually gone there. And if he really wanted, and then it made me think, I was starting to already think, okay, if this guy wants to be with me, if anything happens between him and his wife, he's not treating me the same as he does her. I mean, he would sit on the phone for 2 hours and walk her through, while she was driving through the traffic. He goes, oh, Dana gets so upset when there's traffic. And I'm like, so get her a fucking GPS. I said, you just wasted 2 hours of your life on talking her through traffic and why. I said, it's just one more way of her just clutching onto you and you just, being, it's just another way that she's just taking advantage of you. But anyway, I digress. Let's see. Oh, so that day I said, so after I had bitched about my roommate, I said, I'm sorry. I said, you had marriage counseling last night. It was a Tuesday. I know that because he had marriage counseling on Mondays. And I said, so how did your marriage counseling go yesterday? And he goes, well, Dana says she wants to be separated. And I said, and I assume since Dana doesn't make any money and you don't have any spare money, then you're going to stay in the same house. And he goes, yeah. Now, remind me, if you don't remember, she had moved out into another bedroom. Every day she would run in front of him. Because she didn't go to sleep until like after he left for work. So she would purposely run into his room naked, and she has a great body, and she would run in there and naked, take a shower, and then run out of there naked with no towel on, and that was cruel. I thought that was really cruel, and I told him that, and eventually, he said, when she said that she wanted to be separated, he said, fine, then no more running into my bathroom naked to take a shower. Either use the kids or come in, with a robe on, fully clothed, but I think he was being too nice on that anyway. But so he said, we're gonna go out this Friday, and I had been telling him all along, based on, because he cheated on his first wife. When things were not going well with them. And I had told him, I said, don't go out with anybody until you are completely done with her. I mean, completely. When you're never going to go back to her, even, it's okay, you don't have to wait. I know a divorce takes a long time, like a year or more. And so it's okay. I said, but just make sure that you are completely 100% done with her before you go out with somebody. And that was even before I knew he was interested, or because it would fluctuate because I could see how much he loved the kids, that he'd bring the kids to school. He always watched those kids. He fed them, watched them, did their homework with them. She did nothing. She still does nothing. As a matter of fact, at this date, she is living in Chicago. The kids are living with their father, but Corey is still taking them, picking him up, he's taught him how to swim, so he's taking him to swim. And as a matter of fact, today he's probably at I know yesterday he was at a swim conference with the two kids. And they came and stayed with, quote, Uncle Corey, he said, this weekend. But see, he's still hanging on to her. And I could see that back then. And I knew that he wouldn't leave him because of those kids. Anyway, and I kept telling him all of this. So when he did ask me out, I said, okay, Corey, this is all we can do. We can go to movies. We can go to walks. We can go dancing, because he liked to dance, especially tango. And I said, and we can do things, but we can only be friends. We can't be anything else until you give me that piece of paper. I said, I don't even want to see you, and I don't want to even think about anything else until you have that piece of paper. Well, he said, we're going out this Friday. And that's when I reminded him of my rules. Well, he came over that Friday, and it was raining. So we had planned on going for a walk down the beach, and it was raining. So what was I going to do? Well, say, okay, here's an umbrella, let's go for a walk. And I said, okay, well, I invited him in. Well, that lasted, about 3 seconds. And then the guy that I had been dating, we were on and off so much. Before that, I had James, which was, date from hell for 7 years. I went out with the other guy, or we didn't even go out. Excuse me, Ray, you're a big boy. We had sex, that was it. But it got me away from James. And James was so detrimental to me. So I went out with this other guy that happens, which is Tom. And what's Tom's last name? Hazel. Tom Hazel. And he's an instructor at El Camino. Like I said, we met on the track and have the same back condition. And he was going in and out, and that's because when I met him on the track, I didn't know it, but he was still married, and he actually got a divorce while before we ever went out. I gotta admit, that's one thing I've got to admit. He listened to things, even though he's from what I understand, he's an alcoholic. He listens to things, and he's never cheated on me. He's broken up with me before he's cheated on me, and he didn't ask me out or didn't do anything with me until after he got his divorce. So I have to give him credit for that much. Corey, I can't give him credit for that because he didn't listen to that part. So Corey came over here that night or that afternoon, and of course it went a lot further than that, but we didn't have intercourse. And then I called him back that night and said, I can't do this. I cannot do this with a married man. I can't, and on and on and on. Well, a week later, somehow he asked me again over, and he came. I didn't even answer my phone that day. And, but I felt guilty. I felt good old Catholic guilt kicked in, and then, and then I felt bad for him, and, because he hadn't had anybody even just give him a hug in all these years. So I went ahead and said, okay, you can come over, but remember we have to stick to these parameters. So he came over, that lasted 2 seconds, and then there he was back into, taking my clothes off and doing everything but having intercourse. So I called him again as soon as he left that night, and I left messages for him saying, I can't do this. I cannot do this with a married man. Because my ex-boyfriend of 7 years is still married, hasn't been with that woman for 32 years. They've been married for 33 years, and I couldn't deal with that again. And he knew about it, but of course probably forgot. And so this is a long, drag-out story of what happened in that whole day. So the third time he wanted to make a date and he wanted to have sex with me, I told him that he had to do something that he told me he would never do. And I was taking a swim class from him at the time during all of this was happening. So while we were taking swim class and he was talking to me, and we would go in and out of periods where he wouldn't talk to me, during this time when I would tell him, no, I'm not going to do anything with you, And so while I was trying to do some swim stroke, he came over to me and happened to mention me. He goes, oh, I've been really busy doing yada, 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 which is what I told him to do. I said, the only way I would consider sleeping with you, is if you did this, this, and this. And so he told me he had done all of those things, which he had told me he would never do those things before. And that I thought it was my easy way out of not sleeping with him. Well, if you know me, I'm a person of my word, so I figured I kind of had to do it. And plus I kind of figured I had to do it because I wanted to swim and swim at the time I wanted to swim at, but as the day got closer, I finally realized I couldn't do it, and because it was like a week in advance, he had asked me, and he had canceled swim practice during the middle of like the biggest meet that was coming up, just to come over to my house at 9 o'clock in the morning. But I'm sorry, I'm not going to let somebody come over at 9 o'clock in the morning, because what does that mean? Booty call, and I'm not going to be that kind of a person. So I couldn't do that, and just the thought of that made me sick. So I called him and told him, I'm not going to do this, and I went on and on several times. I said, if you want to stay in this marriage that you're in, then keep on doing that. And on every phone call message I left for him, I always would say this. I said, if you don't want me to call anymore, just let me know, and I'll quit calling. Because that's something he called me on later on. And I said, yes. I said, just text me. You don't want me to talk to you. You don't want me to leave you these messages anymore. But I kept telling him, you're a complete fool to stay with this woman. Not for me. Not because of anything else. But if you want to have 3 kids living with you, which is her 2 kids and her, that's what you're going to have, then fine. Be happy with it. Don't be upset with it. Expect to be celibate for the rest of your life, and that's fine. If that's what you want to do. But don't sit here and be pissed off that you're not having sex if you're not going to have the fucking balls to get up and leave her. And he never did. the only reason he ever finally got it, I mean, he went back to her, and when he sent me this, finally sent, well, anyway, I wasn't swimming because I couldn't swim. He was having these conferences, and he wouldn't tell me when I could come in and swim. And Beth McSorley was here, my helper, and I kept leaving this text messages, and I said, are these text messages, offensive? And I kind of let her, she was the one that first let me, I really believed when she told me he really likes you. So she saw the text messages I was sending him, and I was strictly asking about going swimming, nothing else, and he wasn't responding. And that went on for a couple of weeks. So he was interfering with my ability to take a class on more than one occasion. First, when he, embarrassed me in the one class, and then I went to swimming where there were not people, seeing that, and then now he's not letting me even swim during that period, and I assumed it was because I turned him down for sex. I just found out very recently in the last couple of weeks that it was because his wife saw that text message I wrote where it said, I'm not going to sleep with a man who, if he dies tomorrow, everything is going to his wife that hasn't had sex with him in a year and a half, moved out of his bedroom and everything. And now she should have been very happy. They both should have been very happy. But instead, he let her come over to me. I mean, he stopped talking to me completely in my regular class. I couldn't swim in the afternoons because I never knew when they were. He told me, oh, we're never there, which I found out on the last day of school. They were there every Tuesday and Thursday except maybe one. And there was only 1 or 2 days where he actually told me, I think there was one day. There was one day where he actually told me that they were going to be swimming. And that was from April, what did I tell you? April 9th is when this whole thing started. This whole thing happened in like 3 weeks or less. So it was, I'm sorry, not April, but March 9th. So April, May, and June. So it was 2.5 months. He claimed that they never swam on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And when I was folding flyers with the kids at the end of the semester, they told me they swam every Tuesday and Thursday. Yet I continued to make cookies for them because I wasn't going to punish them just because of what he had been doing. Whenever I could come in and swim, I would bring cookies to them. And I brought cookies to them on that last day of school too. But I think that was only one of two. There was only 2 days, I think. It was that day, the last day of school, and then maybe one day between that whole period that I swim also. So because of his actions, I was denied my ability to swim and to have physical therapy because he knew that I was using this as physical therapy. Now, the day he asked me out, and I felt so uncomfortable about that, like I said, because I didn't want, anyway, I was talking to this girl I worked with in the bookstore occasionally. Her friend was the last of 4 women that filed a sexual harassment claim against the dean, who's no longer with us because of that, of PE. Now, this woman, her name is Linda, and I'll have to get back to you on her last name. She works in the PE department now. She used to work in the business department where I worked when I was a CIS lab assistant. And Linda was the last person to have made a claim. They were the first 3 women, and then Linda's claim came later. And that was just settled a year ago, March or April. I think it was March. It was a year ago, March, because it was the same day that Coach Stanbury asked me out, or told me we were going to go out, and I ran into my friend from the bookstore, and we were talking in the parking lot, and I was telling her, I said, we were talking about Linda, and I said, I've had many situations where I could claim sexual harassment, i.e., the two cases I just told you about in the beginning of this thing. When I was in automotive school, I had one teacher in particular who used to pull out his little hoo-hoo and wave it at me. And you know what a hoo-hoo is. It's behind the zipper of your pants. And tell me that I owed him at the end of the year. The job I had before that, my boss raped my girlfriend, and the job I had before that, my clients used to require kisses or hugs or something, and they'd try and kidnap me on boats and whatever and take me away and try to get me to have sex with them. So I've had plenty of instances where I could have claimed sexual harassment. Oh yeah, not to mention the times I worked in automotive and what the guys in automotive did behind my back and threatened me, and going to automotive school, threatening me, gangbangers and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I've had more than... I probably had up to at least, without even thinking, 20 to 30 instances where I could have easily claimed sexual harassment and never did. And I was sort of mentioning that to her, and she said, well, you know, it was either that or she would lose her job. Now, she used to work in the business department. I worked in the business department with Carol, a lot of times for free, sometimes for pay. And Carol is not one to tell stories. So for her to tell me anything, there was a reason. Now, she knows everything about what was going on with Corey, except I didn't tell her when he asked me out. She was always going, oh, God, I can't wait till he gets a divorce because the two of you will get together and that'll be so nice because you're so much better suited for each other and all this kind of stuff. And and I would always ignore people because I knew more than anybody he was never going to leave her because he loved her. And apparently, let me finish my story then. I was talking to this girl, Donna, and from the bookstore, and Donna said, she goes, oh, well, she only did this for her son. Now, she has an illegitimate son from one of the teachers in the business department, whom I happen to have had a crush on, and he wouldn't go out with me because I wasn't rich enough. Anyway, because one of the teachers was asking me, knowing how all the stuff I'd been through with being paralyzed and everything, and losing my husband and everything, and she said she tried to fix me up. She goes, the best person to get hooked up with is this one teacher, which is whom this girl had a child with, and I'm not going to mention his name because I don't think we need to mention. Well, yeah, we probably do because something else that happened. What is his name now? Shucks, I'll have to go back to my emails. Gosh. Anyway, we'll call him Willie because that was my nickname for him, is Willie. It's William, but that's not what he goes by at school. And anyway, she has an illegitimate child from him. And Tom, good old Tom Hazel, had told me a story before one of the times we broke up last January, that Linda and Donna were drunk at a party one time, and they were talking about how back in the old days when they used to have like famous bands come to the school, that the two of them would give blowjobs to the roadies so they could get backstage and try to fuck people in the band. So I'm telling you, this is what Linda is like. Linda is known to be the biggest slut on campus. Well, female slut. Tom is known to be the biggest male slut. So there you go. And then somewhere along the way, Corey told me just out of happenstance, because he had no idea that Tom was the person I was going out, or I can't say go out with, but anyway, sleeping with. He said he had told me also that Tom was a slut, and that like I said, he didn't know when or anything about me and Tom, and he just happened to say, yeah, he was dating her up until like about March, which would happen to be when she went to trial for the sexual harassment case. And I'm sure Tom quit seeing her then because he didn't want to be involved with her at that time, which I don't blame him. He's not the smartest person in the world, but he does know when to back out. If this seems so convoluted, believe me, this is just like, you ought to see what it's like being on my side of the shtick. In between all of this, I'm working in the CIS department. They love me. The teacher I worked for me loved me. The guy who I worked for, I had tried to ask him out for a beer a couple of years earlier before I worked for him. And he was really kind of rude, but we worked together really well. And there's two people that know that. And they knew how well we got along, and that I hold no grudges against anybody. Again, another reason that I don't claim sexual, I mean, I could have claimed harassment against that, but I never did, because I don't think that way. I just, hey, he had a right to choose whatever he wanted. And I later found out why. Now, he asked me to go to an event with him, and was a perfect gentleman, never even bothered to kiss me or nothing. And this is when I was working for him. And I again, it was one of those things like Dad, when Dad was trying to molest me and you were in the other room. Damned if I do, damned if I don't. I didn't know what to do, so I went with him anyway. But nothing happened. But he kept gabbing about it to everybody. Oh, Jeanette and I went here, to this thing. Well, he takes everybody to see this guy. He's the head of this carcinoma group, because his wife died 10 years ago from carcinoma. And this guy sings and had carcinoma, lost his jaw and everything. But he takes everybody to see the singer. So I found out. So I didn't think too much about it. But he just kept repeating it over and over and over, and it was kind of embarrassing me. And he repeated it many times in front of Carol, and Carol claims she never heard it. Because one day I just finally had to tell her something, and I said, I'm sorry. I said, this has been driving me crazy for months now. And I mean, we're talking months had gone past. And I said, you've heard him talk about that. And she kind of went, well, sort of, because she says all of that's hearsay, so she doesn't listen to it. But I said, well, I went to him to see that guy, and she goes, oh yeah, he takes everybody to that. And I said, yeah, I got that impression. And I said, and nothing happened. I said, but when I got in the car and we started driving, I said, he has this twitch. I said, I had to do everything in my power not to stop laughing. I said, because, I mean, he literally would lift himself off the seat in his chair for like 5 inches or so. And this guy's 6'7", and very thin. And, I mean, it really totally freaked me out. And then when I got to this event and we were pouring drinks, free drinks for people, that's when I found out that he is a cancer whore and he'll sleep with anybody with cancer. So I never thought he was ever interested in me either. Comes to find out later on that he's very interested in me. And just as after I made that comment to Donna apparently... I never did tell you the comment I made to Donna. Well, Donna and I were talking, and I said, of course, I never claimed sexual harassment. And she said, well, she did it for her kid, and she had this guy on tape, this coach, the dean on tape, telling her not to say anything about them sleeping together. Well, she slept with everybody on campus anyway that she could, and anybody that came to campus. So it's Carol told me that she was willingly sleeping with the dean of school, that they had kicked her out of the business department because she was always showing her breasts and she was sleeping around with too many people and got pregnant from Willie. William Harris, that's his name. Very rich man at our school. I was working for Sophia Sheriff, and Sophia Sheriff asked William Harris if he would go out with me, kind of in a way, in a very easy way, and he said I didn't. He said, oh, well, we worked together, and that was his excuse. But she already knew that he wouldn't go out with anybody unless they were worth as much money as he was. And Willie, like I said, William Harris and I would send him a couple of emails here and there. First time I went, when he found out I was actually getting paid as a CIS 13 assistant, and I went and asked him a question. He asked me to sit down, and he I was asking him how he felt about the things he had gone through. He had had a heart attack and had cancer. And I said, "Don't you feel like you're missing out on, the life, your life is going to end anytime soon, and that you need to jump into something?" And I said, "That's kind of the way I feel." And he said the only thing I think about what's happened to me, he said, is that I no longer can have sex for 4 hours a night. I can only have it for 3. Now, he brought that up. That was totally, and I went back and told Carol, because she was my best friend, not because I wasn't trying to tell anybody, but Carol was my best friend, and I'm like, because if you saw Mr. Harris, he's so prim and proper, and he does cuss all the time in class, but other than that, he's pretty prim and proper, and he's very nice, and he'll help you with your bags out of your car if he's walking by, and things like that. But it just floored me. And I said, "Carol, you aren't going to believe what he said." So I told Carol what he said. So sometime later on in an email during the summer, this is like, we're talking about, okay, I'm not, it's summertime, I'm not working as a CIS anything, so I'm technically not an employee. I send him an email and I ask him if he has any friends I can meet. Because I thought, well, maybe, I'm not going to ask him that because I already know how he feels, so I'll ask him if he has any friends. And I I said, somebody that can go, at least 3 hours a night. And that was his line. Well, when the dean of business heard about the claim of sexual harassment, she started kicking back my emails. One was from my ex-boss. His name is Dave Murphy, the tall guy with the funny thing he did in the car. One day, again, I happened to be asking him, and because I was so stressed out from the roommate from hell thing, and I said, "Oh, do you know anybody I could go out with?" And he goes, "Oh, well, I get off at 5. So we went out and we had a drink and we had something to eat. There was no touching, no nothing. He actually introduced me to a couple people that used to work at the college because we were at an island somewhere, an islands restaurant. But I wasn't working for him anymore. It was summer, so it didn't really matter. And he had already told me he couldn't hire me in the fall, saying that they had too many people, which I later found out was a lie, which he later told me was a lie. He later told me that there was a position that I did for free, and I had already decided I was going to move over to automotive and had a job there, and it was more money, more hours, and everything. But I had created this volunteer position, and I was official school volunteer, signed off by the dean. Well, because this claim had gotten to the dean in business, she told my ex-boss, Dave Murphy, that he could not hire me because he was trying to put me on, because we didn't even know how many hours I was going to work in automotive at that time. And she said, "I'm not going to hire her because she claimed sexual harassment against somebody. Oh, and because she's unstable." Now, the unstable thing came from, I'll back up a little, because this was summer. So the last day of the spring semester, when I had a final with a business teacher, a teacher whose husband was run over by another person at El Camino College and pretty much damaged. Not pretty much. He's like childlike now, and the school has not even tried to settle, and she had a bad lawyer and all this other stuff. She should have, she was Carol's best friend, and I was Carol's other best friend in a different way, a newer best friend. Anyway, I used to bring Carol coffee, food every day, and get her out of there, and all the instructors in computer information systems just loved me, and I sat in their classes and spent my time to learn how they wanted their kids to be taught. And anyway, and okay, yeah, this being the last day of school, I had just been to my UD with roommate from hell the day before. When I came in, it was the last day of school, and I was working for Sophia Sheriff, and you could see my eyes, I had been crying on the way home, on the way back from the court, and my boss knew I was going to court, and so did Sophia, and I told them I might be a little late. And when I came in and my eyes were still a little teary, she said, "Oh, go get some coffee," because they were taking a test anyway. So I got her and I coffee, and I ran into the teacher I had for the next day. And I couldn't even talk, because by that time I was in the trunk of my car, and my lawyer, I mean, I had to sit outside. That Thursday before, I had to sit outside for a couple of hours. I thought my case was over, and I was stuck with this guy for the rest of my life. I had called my lawyer, he never called me back. And when I finally got into the courthouse, my lawyer, I mean, with my injury, I look like I'm nervous, and he said, "I don't know what drug you're on." He said, "But you're going to sign these papers, and you're going to go into that courthouse, and you're going to tell that judge that you understand everything that's there, and that's the way it's going to be." And he set me up for fucking failure and having to go to small claims court, 4 times, and which I still haven't even settled, to try and just even win a judgment against this guy. This is when I had that guy Richard, the computer expert from hell, that met Corey also, and he was trying to help Corey with a clock, and figured out that this married guy I was talking about, because I always use anonymity and I try not to tell, he figured out that I was telling him about a married guy, and I was trying to get me to go out with him, and it was freaking me out, and he figured out it was Corey, or Coach Stanbury, without me telling him. And he started screaming and yelling at me on a regular basis and threatening me and telling me how I had to tell the truth, and I had to go do this, and I had to go do that, and that I need to, again, people trying to tell me I have to claim sexual harassment against somebody when nobody can make you claim that somebody's even raped you. So why the school thinks I have to go around and claim something that happened when it, whether it did or not, I said, I'm sorry, I don't, if the law doesn't make you do that, I don't know how they can make you do that. It's, it's not my, and they let other people work there, and they didn't force them to do anything. Well, he volunteered to help me with my roommate from hell situation, because he realized that my lawyer was, not doing a good job, but he's insane himself. I mean, he claims to have been raped since the time he was 5 by a guy who had a humongous dick, and and he stayed with his wife. He got married and he should have never married this wife. She was insane, and she had him arrested. He allowed her to live with him, or they lived together while she was having him arrested like on a weekly basis for being a child molester. So, I'm sorry, this guy, he's the other credible source that claimed that something happened between me and Corey. Because according to him, the police department went to him and said, she's being investigated for, having an affair with this teacher, and claiming sexual harassment against some teacher in PE, which I don't think they've ever determined who the some teacher in PE is. And we want you to tell us everything there is about it. And I'm pretty sure he told everything I've just told you to him, because eventually I just yelled and screamed at him, and I said, if anybody ever freaking asks me, I'm going to tell them that I don't think Corey did anything wrong, which is not really true, but I'm still trying to protect him. I think he did do a lot of things wrong. As a matter of the one thing I think he did wrong most of all is he didn't handle the situation well at all. And if I didn't mention it yet, he let his wife talk to me one day back in March or early April, and when I didn't realize that was her, because she went from that mousy brown curly hair long to this short brown. I don't know where she got all this hair from. She looked like a boy because the way she was dressed. And I thought it was a guy talking to him. And I was going to buy a new car, but Corey was supposed to give me the name of somebody to have, a mechanic to help me fix the car. And I went to go ask him about that, because he hadn't been talking to me And that happened to be his wife that was there. And she came out and told me, oh, I read your email and, she goes, shame on you. She goes, you know that us women, we have to stick together and we have to not have sex with these men because these men just, are our husband, these men just use us for sex, and it's such a disgusting thing. And you can't let anybody, she goes, shame on you for ever liking sex. And that's what she said to me. And I said, and she goes, and you took advantage of the situation that we were having, like, problems. I'm sorry. The woman told him to go, she moved out of his room, told him to go sleep with other women, told him in therapy, I want to be separated. And as far as he was concerned, they were separated. And the only message she heard is, I don't want to sleep with this man because he's married. And because if I'm not going to sleep with somebody if you die tomorrow, then everything goes to your wife. So, I mean, that was wrong. I mean, and when Corey and I finally talked about it months later, he said, well, I couldn't stop her. And I said, I quoted, what it says in the school laws. It says nobody has a right to interfere with another person's enjoyment of their work or their classroom. And I said, you don't think that would have bothered my enjoyment in my classroom? Come on. Because he said, oh, well, I couldn't stop her from saying anything. And then I reminded him of what the rules were. And he had just finished going through sexual harassment class because of what happened with the previous dean. So the new dean, like I said, based on what I spoke to Donna, told this woman, Linda, which is her best friend, that where they used to do blowjobs to the roadies at school, and Linda having the illegitimate child back there. Anyway, she told the new dean, Rory, that I claimed sexual harassment against somebody. So they started a second investigation against me. And they're both, from what I understand, both the first and the second one are ongoing. The first one, when I finally got the restraining order on August 9th, and Roommate from Hell wrote right in there, I went to the school and claimed this. Then the judge said, you had no right to do that. And, and granted me my restraining order based on that. Now, also, while we were in that restraining order, he had the nerve to ask her, when she was reading all the things that they can do and can't do, one of them was you can't own a gun. And he said, well, if I go into another state, can I buy a gun in another state? And now, this brings up a whole other subject where the day I went to go get my restraining order, his new landlord was getting the temporary restraining order against him, which my lawyer said could not be done, which is not true, because while they were living together, she got a temporary restraining order against him. And we were both in the same courtroom, and that's the only reason I found out about her. She told me many things for the next, 2 months about what he was saying. He wanted to be, it turns out that he's gay, which I didn't care, but apparently. He's gay. He's very rich, comes from a very rich family. He's mentally insane, although I don't know if that's ever been claimed. I could never figure out why he was getting SSI, because he told me and my friends he could never get a doctor to claim that he was physically disabled. So it finally dawned on me, he must have a mental disability, and that's why he's getting Social Security. But apparently he gets money. His sister took over his inheritance as a conservatorship, and that's another long story you don't want to hear. But so he's getting money at least once a year, a lump sum or something out of her. So he does have money. He's hiding it in his boyfriend's account named Michael, and I have his full name and address, and he's a student at USC. I have depositions from people that have signed them, and again, about what happened with Roommate from Hell. There's only a couple people that know anything about Corey, because I have tried to keep that very quiet. I don't have, not depositions, but what do you call it? Notarized statements. I forget what they're called. Declarations. Declarations is what they're called. And so I just happened to move, like I said, out of the business department when apparently Rory was told by Linda, Rory went to probably the president of the school, and that's when they started this investigation. Now, when they at some point during the summer, one of my favorite teachers, Jackie Thompson, called in Richard Ciampa, which was, the guy that worked on the computer that took off all my programs, and the police department threatened that if he didn't spill everything, since he was a snitch, then they would kick him out of school. So he told them anything and everything he thought was true. So I'm sure he confirmed that I said something about Corey, which I never did. He literally was. It was like, what is that thing when you're a mental abuser to your wife? No, you don't have to physically do it, but his was mentally. He almost broke my eardrums on a couple of occasions, yelling at me, and I stayed around him way too long because he was helping me with the roommate from hell situation. As usual, I stay around every man way too long. But thank God I have this nice young lady that after making this video won't leave me either. But anyway, oh gosh, now I forgot what it is. Anyway, he told me, and he said, if you ever repeat this, I will not. I'll not back it up. He said, the police department told me that because they called him in only on the affair, which was illegal for them to do that. But the police department told him that there was a claim for sexual harassment against me. Or no, vice versa. They called him in on the sexual harassment thing. And they told him that somebody had made a claim that I was having an affair with an instructor also. And I'm sure he cleared that all up, that, well, he tried, and she said no, but they were still married. Because at first he said, well, it was your fault. And I said, no, it was not my fault. If it was anybody's, I've always claimed if it was anybody's fault, it was Corey's wife's fault. That she was the bitch that started the whole thing. If she had been a wife and remained a wife, or if she would have had the balls to just get out of the marriage, and because she didn't love him, then none of this would have ever happened. Corey loved her. I can't fault a person for loving somebody because I know what that's like. So I've never blamed him. If I blamed anybody, I blamed her. And I did blame, the only thing I blamed her for was allowing her to talk to me. That's it. That's the only thing I've ever blamed him for. That made me, and not talking to me. Because he even though I was in his class, he didn't talk to me, and he wouldn't critique me on swimming or help me swim, and I almost drowned once, and after several times of me mentioning to him, listen, I paid for this class, I'm in your class, and you fucking owe me the courtesy of critiquing my swimming and helping me learn how to swim. Then he finally broke down and started talking to me a little bit. And then it wasn't again until this fall, when school started, the first thing he said, the first time he ever saw me, he said, oh, I'm getting a divorce. And so I assumed he had already filed for a divorce. Anyway, so once, back to the story again, once Dean Rory heard from Linda, the whore, who heard that one little line from Donna that, a teacher had asked me out, and it made me feel a little bit uncomfortable. But that was nothing compared to any of the shit I've ever been through in my life. And excuse me, and then months later I went and told Donna also when I was in the bookstore, because I thought she was my friend. Oh, I said, remember that teacher that asked me out? I said, he had the nerve to tell his wife that I was chasing after him. Now, Beth McSorley knows that's not true. She knows that for a fact. So does my roommate, Terry Eisen, but he's the worst person to have be as a witness, because he was here the 2 times that Coach Stanbury came over. And he could hear everything going on in our room, because the only place you can hear is right in front of the door, and he always seems to be walking by my door when I have somebody here. Anyway, so He knows Coach Stanbury is here. He knows what we did. You know this, so I'm not lying about that. He never saw the other guy, Tom, which by the way we also call the drunkard, but or the drunk, and until recently, but he knew when he was coming because he'd say, "Oh, the door's unlocked." I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's because Tom's coming over." Anyway, and then of course he could hear us sometimes. So there, I mean, those are all verifiable. I mean, there's nothing in here that's not somewhat verifiable. But the fact that I never claimed that, I never did. Linda, because she was the last one, and her court case went separately, and instead of getting $1 million like the other women did, the other 3 women did against the other PE dean, she only got $750,000. Now she got $750,000 and is still working there on campus, and it was bogus. She willfully slept with a man. And now, granted, it was sort of like what happened with me and Corey, so I can't completely, fault her either, because, but my thing is if she could get $750,000 for willfully sleeping with somebody and keep her job, then I want at least that much money for what they've done to me, because they've ruined my reputation. They've stopped me from working. They've violated all of their own rules. They violated the rules of the court because they had no right to investigate this. They've been investigating me for a year now. They've never called me in and even told me about it. And the reason I know it was Linda is because Dave Murphy, back in the computer or business department that was in charge of the computer information systems helpers like I was, told me he saw the papers and he could not believe that the dean there, Dean Rapp, who happened to go to the same law school I did, Whittier College, or Whittier School of Law, he said, "I can't believe that she actually believed her." And when I mentioned that to Carol, and again, without mentioning names, Carol immediately said, "Linda, that bitch," she said she did that to get them off of her ass because of what she just did and to ingratiate herself to her boss. So that's pretty much that whole story of what happened. And summer was okay. I got double hours. I figured I was okay in automotive. And then when that guy who hated my teacher turned me in, then it all turned around again. Now, since then, Corey, Coach Stanbury, won't let me swim the extra times, even if I was working there, even if I worked there for free in teaching like he used to. So he's now denied me the right to get my physical therapy in. He's actually said to me, "Well, you can tell other instructors that you're in that," because I'm in another class that's teacher's instruction, water instruction. He said, he instead of saying like most teachers do, like all teachers do, and my helper can attest to this, that once you're in any water class at all, you can go into any water class and swim. Now, because Dean Rory has gone to Coach Stanbury, and said, "Why did you let Jeanette into?" I was in water polo class last semester, and it was actually season. The only reason, I went into that class is I lost a 4-unit class that was being dropped that day, and if it was being dropped that day, I was going to lose my job in automotive for the fall semester. So I walked over and I asked, Coach Stanbury if I could get into his class, and then left. That's all I would say. I mean, at that point, that's all we would talk about. I mean, I would not go on any further with that anymore. And so I got in that class, and it wasn't until midway through the class that they had the athletic director, Bones, that's his name, come to me and tell me I had to get out of that class, which I did. And I didn't make any, I was fine. But I could tell when Bones was talking to me that he knew the whole thing that was going on. And Bones and I used to work out together, and that's a whole other story I won't get into. But Bones had him, made fun of me. Like I was a dumb shit once during a class I was taking. And I can go into that in more detail if you want. So he harassed me, and actually Tom, in a way, Tom Hazel harassed me. Has nothing to do with him and I, what we did, but he was always going around telling me, "Oh, you and all the free classes that you're, basically insinuating I was getting special treatment in swimming." He said, "Oh, you're making yourself visible." Well, that's bullshit, because my helper can tell you that every teacher does that, and whenever I leave a class, and every other class I've ever had, because I transferred out of Corey's class because I didn't want it to make it look improper, and I really didn't care to see Corey at all. The other instructors all said the same thing. "Oh, as soon as class is over, come back and swim anytime you want." So Corey is denying me my right to swim, and especially as a disabled person, because that's what they allowed me to do before as a person who helps everybody on campus. Tom and Corey both know that I help everybody. Even Tom has said, Tom see me in his office on the first day of school is get rid of everybody that are bothering him and direct students to where they need to go. Corey knows I help people because I helped somebody in his diving class last semester, and I tutored another one of his students on the swim team. So they know that I'm always helping students. So Corey is willfully denying me the right to swim, even though he wouldn't have done it any other time. And he told me that his words were exactly, he said, "If you get this thing cleared up, then I can let you do that again." Now, I have begged him, and I have gone to him and say, "Listen, Corey, there's nothing wrong with what you did. She told you were separated. You can't, you wanted to go out with me. I told you I couldn't because you were legally still married. So you need to go to them and tell them the truth." He refuses to do so. I have begged him and begged him and begged him. And this Christmas, and meanwhile, Tom and I have gone in and out. And actually, Tom and I are getting along better than we ever have, but part of that's because I was lonely and I wasn't seeing Tom, and I figured, shit, I'm in all this crap because of Corey. And Corey always used to tell me how good he was, and I thought, shit, I'm already being accused of it. I might as well just do it. So I called him up, and I said, "Do you want to hear something totally insane?" And I texted him that, and he called me back, and he goes, "What?" And I said, "Why don't we get together?" So Corey and I have been having a little thing going on. I figured, hell, I might as well tell you because I am. Because you know what? I have nobody, and my ex-boss, Dave Murphy, I didn't finish telling you about that. Dean in that department kicked back some emails, and I mentioned that a little bit about that. One she kicked back was to Carol. One was to Mr. Harris. One was to my ex-boss, Dave Murphy. And the other one was to Kathy Mashler. Kathy Mashler was my teacher that I had the last day of school. I went in there and I had a doctor's excuse not to take my exam, but she never let me get that out. She called in my boss, which is Dave Murphy, and I started getting upset. And you know me, when I get upset, I cry. It doesn't mean anything, it's just that I cry. And I was afraid that the dean was going to see, because I wanted Carol's job when she leaves in about 6 months. Everybody knows I'm the best person for that job. The dean did come in just like I anticipated, and because I have a sixth sense about these things, she then went on to tell Dave Murphy and who knows how many other people that I'm mentally unbalanced. And like you said, she didn't have a right to do that unless she had a doctor examine me. And it was, again, months before I found out that Dave, it wasn't until, and I've got Dave on tape, Dave was talking to me over the phone, and he told me when he got drunk that, it was Linda that told Rory that told Dean Rapp in business, and Dean Rapp that originally ruined my reputation and started this whole thing. So that's pretty much everything to where we are today. So let's see, so they violated my right of privacy, like I said, because the police department told Richard some stuff about me, about the other, they pulled in Richard for the having claimed sexual harassment, and then they violated my right of privacy by telling him about the original investigation that was going on for me supposedly having an affair with an instructor. They violated my right of privacy because they told roommate from hell that there was also a sexual harassment claim against another instructor going on, which they had no right to do. They also violated my right to privacy and another department in the Special Resource Center, because the Special Resource Center told roommate from hell that they were not going to give me any privileges because I was cured. And when I went to renew my right to use the Special Resource Center, the head of the department, maybe I'll think of it in a second, she told me, it starts with a D, she told me that almost the same identical thing. Oh, well, you don't need any of these special privileges anymore. You're all better. And I looked at her like, I said, excuse me, you don't get cured from a spinal cord injury. And anyway, so I know that that's true because she even told me what my roommate had told me months back in August 9th. Then the head of the department told me in December or January, I don't remember exactly. I'd have to look that up. So, but not my roommate told me, but he actually wrote it in his response to the restraining order. And also something I didn't tell you about what the guy roommate from hell did is he called people I do business with, or thought I did. One person he happened to call was one of my roommate Terry's his insurance company, and told him I was a slut and a whore and I can't be trusted and I never follow through with contracts and all kinds of things like that. So and also he reported me to every agency under the sun, nobody of which, I mean, no, and I know that there are reports because I've contacted some of these places and they never followed through on any of them. But he reported me to, and along with, he never even showed up for court, and he has, since the restraining order, took me back to court, which is a violation of my right to live a peaceful life. So he needs to go to jail for what he's done by violating that rights, and I can't get a cop to arrest him, and I don't even know how to go about doing that. So he's still harassing me. I'm still being harassed by him because everything he started is still harassing me. And I should be able to do something about that. The school never looked into the fact that I told them this man asked if he could go get a gun from some other place. Therefore, we don't know the state of this man's mind. And I strongly urge you to check out his mental capacity because you are responsible for him, I can't think of another proper word, but going postal, possibly, on them. And I'm sorry this is so long, but so basically I'm still sleeping with the two of them. I'm trying to keep them around because they're the only two people I have that give me a little bit of insight. Oh yeah, and the last thing is, Tom told me just last week that Rory, the dean of PE, the one who really started this whole thing against me, he writes emails he said at a third grade level, because he took a bunch of these emails to a friend of his that's a professor of English, and the professor of English said this is nothing more than third grade English. And he went to Rory and told that to him, and Rory said, well, I don't have time and I'm just pushing him out. But Ray, if you're intelligent, you can write something intelligent in 2 minutes. You don't write at a third grade level. I know you don't write at a third grade level. So the dean of PE is an ignorant son of a bitch that didn't do his fact checking, and put me in this whole position to begin with. Let alone Corey is a wimp ass who wouldn't go in there and say anything that was true. Now, I also had this problem with my automotive teacher. I kept telling, I shouldn't have even had to ask him. He understood what the school had been doing and agreed that they had wronged me, and I didn't feel I even had to ask him. He should have just gone to them and told them, hey, the guy in the tool crib just out and out lied about her, and you should punish him. As the bylaws here say, they never have. He's still working. He's never had a day off, and he's actually, they said, getting a little bit better. I don't care if he's getting a little bit better. What he did to me was wrong, criminal, and and it was intentional infliction of emotional distress and everything else. The stupidity of what Linda did was also wrong, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and she did that to just get people off of her ass. She needs to fucking be off of work at least as long as I have, or get fired altogether, the two of them. Rory is stupid, and he needs to be fired because he's just stupid, and he should have never ruined my name as bad as he did. Dean Rapp called me insane, basically. She needs to be fired because of what she said. She's a lawyer. She knows better. And she's even gone to my friend Carol and asked her if I was going to sue. So they know. And I have gone to two people, Michelle in the student center. I can't remember her last name. I'll tell you later. And I sort of went to this one person who's in charge of like sexual harassment and disabled students, and her name is Lisa Biggers, and I had a meeting set up with her, but then she moved it from her office to, she said she denied, she denied me my ADA rights of having somebody in there to take notes for me, or for me to have a recorder. So that's another, so they violated my right of privacy, they violated my ADA rights, they've done everything that they possibly could do to me. And if I may have missed anything, I'll let you know, but I think I've pretty much covered this well. Okay, I'm done. Want me to press stop? Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. That was an hour and 46 minutes. But I can't get it to press stop.